Hi, I'm Debbie Ford, creator and owner of Thru The Stones. I am being interviewed today to put on the DVD that we are going to put out about the conventions. And we're doing it here in my flower shop, my place of business. And I'm surrounded by some of the things that I love, some of the gifts that have been given to me by you, the fans. And this is where I work, right here at this desk. And this is where I work on Thru The Stones. This is it. I'm going to answer some of your fan questions. What I did to get these questions is I contacted a few of my friends that went to both of the events, and they sent me the questions. So here we go. What inspired you to create the first Thru The Stones convention? Where were you, and what were you doing when the idea first came to mind? Well, the story goes, in summer of 2013, I had this idea. I was here at the flower shop working, and you daydream, you're working along, and I thought, gosh, how much fun it would be to spend a weekend immersing yourself in Outlander. So I got on the internet, scoured the internet, couldn't find anything like what I was envisioning. What I was envisioning was, of course, meeting my favorite author, Diana Gabaldon, and classes and things to do with the Outlander books. I like to learn, and so I wanted things that we could do that pertained to the books. So there was nothing like that on the internet, so I thought, gosh, that would be fun. But there wasn't anything, so I moved on. Then in the autumn, in November, I thought, this idea just won't go away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write to Diana and see if perhaps this is something she might be interested in doing. So I wrote a letter to Diana and also to her agents at Random House, and that was in November, didn't hear a word. Come January, I got an email from Random House, and they said, we like this idea, we're interested, tell us more about it. So I told them more about what I was envisioning, and they said, we like this idea, we'll get on board with this. And so Diana was finishing writing the last book, number 8, written in my own heart's blood. And so at that time, she could not commit to doing anything until she had finished the book. So in February then, I had a family meeting with my 2 sons and my husband and said, I really would like to do this. I would like to host this convention, but it has the potential to be really, really big, or it has the potential to lose a whole lot of money. And my husband said, well, it's only money. And my son, Eric, the oldest one, said, Mom, quit doing stuff for everybody else and do it for yourself. And I said, okay. And so I forged ahead. And finally in May, then I was able to get a signed contract with Diana, and I was able to announce to the world that in December I would be hosting the first convention. And that's how Thru The Stones 2014 came about. When I went to go after my next guest, I really wanted Sam, and I had made contact with his agent in the UK, and we agreed on price and we agreed on duties, but it would be dependent on whether or not he was available, because they have all this filming, and they were finished with filming, but they had voiceovers and things to do, so Sam was unable to come. I didn't know this until about 6 weeks out. And I thought, now who am I going to get? And so I thought, I know, I'd love to meet Dougal. So I contacted Graham McTavish, and he immediately wrote me back and said, I would be delighted to come to Iowa. And we were his first Outlander convention in December of 2014. So that was kind of cool. So that's how the ideas came about, and that's the story. Next question is, have you previously been involved in creating something like this? Well, in my previous life, in my current life, and in my previous life, I am a florist. And so obviously I create parties, weddings, things like that, but of course on a much smaller scale than the convention. Then also I have been executive director for Main Street Orion, which is a small organization here in our small town that promotes the community. And I had planned things like town-wide events for our 100th birthday for our band shell, things like that. So I had planned events, but nothing on this scale. Question is, what method of organization do you count on to keep track of all your plans and details? Notebook, computer, Sticky notes on a bulletin board? In your head? Well, the answer is all of those. This is my desk. This is where I work the majority of the time. A lot of my goodies are right here in this notebook, and then I also have this big notebook that lots of things are recorded in. I don't let that out of my sight. That stays pretty close to me. But I do have sticky notes all over. I have a lot of things in the computer, but a lot of it's in my head. You know, this is a creation. This is a baby that came to me to my mind, and so a lot of it's up here. And thankfully, it pretty well all works out. But that's how I keep track of things. Question is, who do you bounce ideas off of during the creation process? Is there a disagreement? If there is a disagreement on which direction to head, how is it sorted out until a conclusion is attained? Well, I couldn't do this convention without my two sisters. Sandy and Jenny are the ones that I bounce everything off of. They were my confidants early on and have stuck by my side, and I couldn't do it without them. They're instrumental in helping get this put together. Our family has grown. Our Thru The Stones family has grown, and we've added also Sandy's daughter Dawn, Ginny's daughter Tiffany. But this core group of women, we also have a niece, or a friend, Annie, and we have another friend, Jessie, who helps us. But when we gather and sort things out and bounce ideas off of each other, usually it's me and Sandy and Ginny. If there's a disagreement, which there rarely is because we're sisters and we think a lot alike, but if there's a disagreement, it really comes down to me and what I want to do, because it's my thing, it's my baby, and everybody concedes to that. So that's how that's sorted out. The next question is, do you have any family connection to Scotland or any ancestors from there? The answer is no, I do not that I know of. Although just yesterday, my sister Sandy was doing some genealogy research on our family and found out that we do have a 5 times great-grandfather that served in the Revolutionary War, and we just learned it yesterday. So that's pretty exciting stuff, but no Scotland connections. Question is, how do you decide who you would like to go after to be the keynotes of the convention? Well, you heard how Graham came about, and Diana came about because I knew that for the first convention, I had to have Diana. That was my first and only choice, and I was going to go after her and try and get her, and thankfully I did. Terry was a gut instinct. I like to know how things work and how things are put together, and so Terry was someone who I thought, gosh, I'd like to know more about her and her job and how things happen. And so I started pursuing Terry. And how I got a hold of Terry was I stalked her on Twitter. She's a Twitter follower. You guys all know that. And I couldn't find her agent anywhere. She's really, really flies below the radar. And so I just started stalking her on Twitter. And when she would pop up on Twitter, I would immediately send her a note. And most notes got ignored. Finally, she started paying attention to me, and she answered a couple of my questions. And finally, she said, here's my agent. I can't talk about this anymore in this public forum. So then I got a hold of her agent, and then I could get a hold of her privately and make that arrangement. Grant was fairly easy. His agent is available online, and so he was not a problem, and he was happy to come. So that's how I've gotten my 4 so far. What happens next time? Who knows? What were the celebrities' reaction when you tell them about the event and invite them to come? Well, I've told you a little bit about it. Random House and Diana were interested in the format because nothing like that had quite been done yet. And Graham immediately said, I'd love to come to Iowa. Terry had never been to Iowa, and so she was happy to come. And this was her very first convention where Terry was keynote. She's gone to other conventions, but she's generally kind of more in the background. She tags along with Ron, or she's asked a question or two, but then it's not all about Terry. So this was her first convention in 2016 where she was the Outlander keynote. So that was kind of special. And Grant loves doing these things. He's a people person, obviously. You can tell that from talking with him. And so he likes doing these conventions. And like he told us privately, he said, I'm not going to be able to do this forever. because I'm written out of Outlander now, and so I've got to do it while I can. So he looks at it as a job, and he enjoys it, and so he's traveling around the world, kind of on the Outlander thing, doing that right now. So that was how Grant came about. I know you've been asked to do conventions in other cities and states, and you have declined. Can you share what your thought process is behind that decision? I have been asked many times. I've had people contact me and say, gosh, won't you do this in Atlanta? Won't you do this in Denver? And my answer immediately is, no, this is not something I can take on the road. I live here. I live here in the Quad Cities. My contacts are here. I know the venues. I know the people. And how am I going to come up with 12 instructors for classes in a city that I don't even know? So no, I don't plan to take this on the road. It's going to stay here in the Quad Cities, and I'm quite happy to have it here where my contacts are and my help. And where would I store everything if I had it somewhere else? So no, it has to be here in the Quad Cities. Question is, the weekend of the convention, you and your family make it look effortless. Would you share how much time, effort, and money you invest in organizing the weekend? Whew, I can't begin to tell you how much time is invested. It's impossible. I work on it every single day in one form or another. It might just be research. It might be reading books looking for trivia questions. It might be scouring the internet for an instructor, but the hours are endless. Coming up a couple of months out ahead of the convention, Sandy and Jeannie and I meet every Saturday or Sunday. Well, every weekend we meet and we do something convention related. It could be stuffing name badges, or it could be sending out letters. It's impossible to say what it would be, but we meet every weekend and work on the convention. As far as money, there's a lot of money involved. I'll just give you one little hint. In 2014, I spent over $30,000 just on speakers. That would include my keynotes and my instructors, but over $30,000 is spent just on speakers. So it's not something that I take very lightly. It's something that I seriously have to be conscious about because, I'm not a wealthy woman. When you reach your greatest frustration level while planning, what is your best method to get mellowed out again? Well, I don't get too frustrated with it, but if I were to get frustrated with it, what I would do is I would just go to another part of the project. Say I was frustrated with working on the class schedules. I would just go to work on something else and then come back to this class schedules later. And that works out pretty well. Or I eat. I like that. How do you find your unique vendors and class instructors? And why would you hold workshops and classes and not hold this strictly as a fan con? Well, I was taught early on in my life that we need to learn something new every day. And so part of my life is learning. I love to research. I love to learn. I love to take classes. I love to continually expand the mind. And when I originally envisioned this convention, that's what it entailed, was classes where we learned things. We learned things about Outlander, or we learned things about the 17th century. For example, at the last convention, we learned how brooms were made. Well, Jamie and Clara didn't go to the local store and buy a broom. They made it. And so that's all part of my thought process is learning a little bit about how things were done and more about the Outlander process. So how do I find my instructors? A lot of different places. Every time I see something in a newspaper that rings a bell, I think, aha, there we go. There's a possibility. My broom maker this year, I went to a festival in Bishop Hill where there was a broom maker there, and he led me to someone else, and then finally I found someone who was able to teach that class. So it's a variety of ways. Sometimes suggestions are easy and they come to me easily. Sometimes they're not so easy and I have to struggle with it. But that's how those instructors come about, is just kind of here and there and everywhere. You didn't get to attend big parts of the weekend because you were working on getting things set up. But was there one thing that you really wanted to do? Well, what I really would have liked to have done was just hang with Grant and with Terry. But that was impossible to do. There was too many other things that had to be done, had to be supervised, had to be taken care of. And so thankfully I had my son Eric taking care of Grant when he was done with one event and had a couple hours to kill before he went to the next event. Eric took him out to dinner because Grant wanted to have barbecue. He wanted to have Midwest barbecue, so they went out for lunch. Terry, a busy woman, talks to everyone. I would have loved to follow her around and just made sure that she was taken care of, but I couldn't, and so thankfully others stepped in and took that role. So I guess that would be what I kind of missed out on, was hanging with the celebrities. What was your personal favorite part of the event, and can you describe what you feel when you look out from the stage and the first time and see the eager crowd that is gathered to live a part of your dream? Well, I guess my favorite part of the event was either trivia night or the fashion show. I enjoyed both of those. I thought those were great fun. The two speeches I didn't hear until later on film, so that I can't say was my favorite part because I wasn't there for it. What do I feel when I look out at the crowd? Oh my gracious. When I looked out, I stood on the stage for trivia night, and all these tables were filled with people, and everyone was happy and eager for it to happen, and I got a big lump in my throat and fullness in my heart, and believe me, I was extremely happy that you all were there. This is not something that I take lightly. I feel great responsibility in bringing you people here. I'm bringing you to my hometown from all over the world, country and world. We had 35 states represented. I know that you're spending your weekend's time, your hard-earned money, and you're trusting me to provide you with a good weekend. And I don't take that lightly. I take that very seriously. And I think it all worked out pretty well. But when I look out at the crowd and see everyone there and everyone's happy, it fills my heart, let me tell you. There aren't really words for it, but that's kind of the bonus. Do you intend to keep these conventions up as long as the show goes on, or the books continue? Do you ever think about stopping? Do you see an end in sight? Well, I take it one at a time. I do see Voyager happening in 2018. I've already started planning for it and looking forward to it, gathering thoughts and ideas and getting things prepared for that. What happens after that? Who knows? I know I can't do an annual event. It's just too time consuming. I spend every day working on it, so I can't. What happens in 2020? Heavens, who knows? We'll see what happens when that comes. But I don't foresee stopping right now, but I take one convention at a time, let me tell you. I get a sense that those who attend your conventions become part of your family. Can you elaborate on that? They do. You do become part of my family. I think about you all every single day. I either work on something for the convention, or I keep the Thru The Stones attendee page updated. I get emails from you all the time. I email you. If I read that someone is sick, I email you and say, gosh, I'm hoping you're feeling better. I really truly do think about you folks every single day. You are part of my family. You have become part of my extended family, and I'm very happy to have extended my family and gotten to know you all. This question says, based on the evaluations, were you surprised by a reaction to anything? I think that one thing that I was most surprised at was that people wanted it to be longer and they want it to be more. Well, so I think, how am I going to do that? I'm not going to go into Sunday. I think Sunday people need to be traveling home and finishing things up and getting back to their real lives. But yes, I will take that into account. And next convention in 2018, we're going to start earlier. The convention will begin much earlier on Friday, and we will extend it. We will probably do classes that Friday afternoon and then run the trivia on Friday evening and then continue on Saturday. But learning from those evaluations is invaluable. Your comments are very much taken to heart and examined, and can we do that? Can we not do that? But that's one thing that was taken away from that, was many people want it to be extended, and so we shall in 2018. This question is, what was the biggest improvement from the first convention to the second? Well, I think all of you who were there at 1 o'clock in the morning in 2014 will agree that it was much better this time in 16 to not be there at 1 o'clock in the morning. We learned so much the first convention about how to move people through quickly. We had the cameras set up, and so we weren't doing selfies with the celebrities, and that moved things along much, much more quickly. We got through many, many more people in much less time. So I would say that was the biggest improvement, along with, while you were waiting to visit with Grant or with Terry, I had things for you to do out in the lobby. We had games, and we had the activity books, and we had dessert, and we had photo ops. We didn't have that in 14, and I learned that we needed to have something else going on during that time to hold your attention and make it not seem like you're sitting there quite so long. So that worked out very well. How has your life changed because of Thru The Stones socially, within your family? Tell us more about how the convention has impacted your family. How has it changed my life socially? Socially, I do. Hi, Dan. My husband just came home. Socially, I do more things Outlander related. Last weekend, I was in Indiana at an Outlander event. So I've expanded my circle of friends. And so I guess that would be that. Within our family, I think that, especially with my sisters and my nieces and the others involved in our immediate staff that I call family, we've become much closer. We're working together. We are spending a lot of time together. And so it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. It gives us something to talk about always. Whenever we're together, we could be getting together just to go to lunch for something else, and we always seem to find our way back around talking about Outlander. And so it has brought us a lot closer together. Who decided which family member would dress as which character? That was completely organic. When I saw Claire come out in her banyan in Paris, I fell in love with it. I thought, oh my gosh, what a beautiful house coat. And so then I went with the banyan. Virginia wanted to dress as Bonnie Prince Charlie, and so she did. She was the one in the beautiful red kilt. Sandy loves to sew. She's a wonderful seamstress, and she likes to do things. She's a girly girl. She likes to look pretty. So she wanted to build a beautiful dress with all the corsets and the big poofy skirts, and so she dressed as a Parisian fashionista for the evening. My husband Dan was Master Raymond, and that I loved Master Raymond's coat, and I thought, who can I get to wear that? Aha, I know, I'll put Dan in it. And so I found a young man who was a friend of one of my kids who painted all Master Raymond symbols on his coat, and so that worked out really, really well. Tiffany was dressed as Prince Charlie. As King Louis. And Virginia sewed that outfit for Tiffany, and she looked great. So it was completely organic. We just kind of fell into it, and everybody kind of picked what they wanted to do and put it together, and that was it. There was no real plan to it. It just kind of happened. If you could bring any of the characters to life and meet them, who would you choose and why? I would choose to meet Madame Jeanne, who ran the brothel in Voyager when Claire and Jamie spent the night there after Claire first came back through the Stones. Why Madame Jeanne? Well, she was a woman in the 1750s who was running her own business. Granted, it was a brothel, but she was running her own business as far as the girls, as far as the wine business, keeping the excise men at bay. She had a lot going on, and I would be interested to meet her and talk with her and find out, how did you do it all? How did you manage it all? Just like you're asking me these questions, how do you do it all? I would like to know how a woman in those days who didn't own property. They weren't, most of them didn't own property, didn't have anything of their own. There she was her own boss, running her own business in the 1700s. And I find that fascinating. I'd like to meet Madame Jan. What do you do with all your time when it's all over and the books and details are closed? Well, I've touched on that already. The books and details are never closed. I work on it every single day, and I love it, and allows me to do that. Owning my own business allows me to do that. Sometimes this morning I worked on flower shop stuff all morning. This afternoon I'll work on Outlander. And so it's never done. I'll continue until I say there's no more. I will continue to work on it always. The final question is, are there any Easter eggs included in this interview? And the answer is yes. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you, Nathan, for coming and filming today. And I guess that's a wrap.